Hi, everybody. This is Cat Margulis, and you're watching Passion Project. And today, in partnership with Harrowsmith Magazine, I'm going to be speaking with Bill Redelmeier and Casey Hogan from Southbrook Winery in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. Nice to have you here, Bill and Casey.
Great to be here, and you're by doing passion projects, you're pushing my buttons.
Why is that? You got to tell me now.
So, rule of thumb: if you can't taste passion in the wine you're drinking the wrong wine. That's, to me, it's the ultimate. Wine is about passion and pleasure and being distinctive, and wine is about passion. It's not a great make money, but it's a great place to exercise your passion. I mean, Casey here has been tons of different things, a somm and a baker and a chef and all sorts of things like that. More things than I can shake a stick at, right, Casey?
I was in engineering for a bit before getting into wine, so yeah, I've had different paths to get me into the winemaking industry, but
very cool.
Great wine is passion. Doesn't matter whether it's Canada, Italy, overseas. If it's not passion, it's the wrong wine.
Yeah, I've got like a million questions I want to ask you. I don't even know where to begin now.
I screw people up that way.
I know my focus of today gets to be about biodynamic farming and winemaking. So maybe I'm going to come from there, although we were chatting before and you've got such a long history with Harrowsmith Magazine and farming. And I know there's so much there I want to explore as well. But for somebody who is so passionate about wine and growing and producing, when and how did you migrate over to biodynamic farming and winemaking? Yeah.
Southbrook, from our side, from Southbrook side, we were farming north of Toronto, roadside market, dealing directly with consumers. We added the winery, but we were purchasing all of our grapes. So we had much less input on what we could do. And when we were looking for a new project, we purchased this property in 2005. It's now 150 acres, 60 acres of vines, with the intention not only of converting to organics, because I don't want to ask my workers to do stuff I don't want to do, and I don't want to spray that shit, but also with biodynamics, because it just plain makes better wine. It's another tool to make better wine. It's more focused. The people that are biodynamic producers share passion. And so the idea was we converted right from purchase of the property. We started the progression towards both organics and biodynamics.
Awesome. So how long have you been doing this now?
Winemaking 30 years, but we bought this property in 2005, and we were certified organic in the early September of 2008, and by the end of September 2008, we had our biodynamic Demeter certification.
Wow, so a really long time. Would you guys say that you're pioneers in this space?
We were the first biodynamic winery in Canada.
Wow.
There was one biodynamic vineyard, but not making wine either organically or biodynamically. So yes, we're the first of what we hope is a large group.
Amazing. And so biodynamic, it's so much, but I guess tell us what it is. What does it look like?
So the first thing when I visit a biodynamic winery, I look for the owner or the winemaker, and I say, look, I need help from you. I need a 30-second, how do you explain biodynamics to your customers? And they almost always laugh and say, I was going to ask you the same question. To me, it's a codified system, but basically what Rudolf Steiner, who developed it in the 1920s, I think did, is because he was not an experienced farmer, he took every old wives' tale and put them together and codified them. So one of my earliest memories was helping in my mother's garden at 3.5. And my mother had an old retired farmer helping her in the garden. And I remember him telling me that his grandfather had told him that if you want the tops of plants, you plant during a waxing moon. And if you want the roots, so potatoes and carrots, you plant in a waning moon. and that you'll usually get your coldest time of the cycle on a full moon. And it works. I mean, scientists will say we can't prove it. Okay, ask any emergency room or elementary nurse or elementary teacher what kids are like on a full moon, and they'll roll their eyes and they'll go, they're crazy. So, you know, if it's affecting people, it's affecting climate, it's affecting everything else.
Yeah.
The sprays in the vineyards are mostly herbal teas, and with organics, you need animals, you need manure for fertility. With biodynamics, it really should be your own animals rather than bringing in somebody else's problems. As far as winemaking is concerned.
So yeah, when I think about biodynamics and wine, I was sort of attracted to Southbrook because of its biodynamic aspects. Working as a somm, I tasted a lot of wines, and I kind of was always, what wines were the most interesting? It always turned out to be wines that were produced biodynamically. So that's what drew me here. And with regards to how I approach it in the cellar, a lot of the biodynamics happens in the vineyard, but we do tend to try and work in the cellar when we're blending on specific biodynamic days. So we take the whole lunar calendar into consideration and plan accordingly in the cellar with that.
Wow. So is the lunar calendar and the moon cycle, is that like the main piece to biodynamic farming? Or, I mean, what would be the other principles of it?
So to me, the real thing behind biodynamics, and like I say, it's a whole bunch of old wives' tales, because until 120 years ago, we didn't have the chemical crutches to fix problems, right? We didn't have fungicides and insecticides. We didn't have artificial fertilizers. So what you had to do was work in harmony with nature to make things as good as you can possibly do. You're never going to get perfection when you don't have the fungicide or the insecticide, but it was good enough. And it was as good as you can get. And so you had to take care in everything you do. We have nothing, very few things in the vineyard, for instance, that we can fix problems. And so what you try and do is figure out ways to prevent them in the first place. You know, if I'm a non-organic farmer, I can put lots of fertilizer onto the field, because when it gets all big and bushy and dense, it doesn't matter, because I can spray fungicide in it and I can spray insecticide in it, because that density increases humidity, which increases rots and mildews. It makes it easier for the insects to attack it, but I can fix all those problems. With biodynamics, the idea, and it's the same thing with Casey in the winery, don't create a problem and then try and fix it. Try and prevent the problem in the first place.
Wow. Doesn't that like the lesson for us in every aspect of our life?
Well, the problem is that my generation particularly has made a hell of a mess of a lot of stuff, and then assumed either that they or the next generation could fix it. Rather than trying to do that, why not try and prevent the problem in the first place? Doesn't that make more sense? Because it's the only sustainable, it's the only long-term way to do it. Humankind survived for hundreds of thousands of years on Earth without creating any problems. It's really only in the last 150 years that we've had the ability to start messing shit up on a global scale. So,
yeah. Love
it.
it.
How many thousands of harvests of wine have as humans had? 4,000, 5,000? And it's really only in the last 100 that we've had all of these things that we can fix problems. So if you're, I often say to people that it's relatively easy to walk across Niagara Falls on a tightrope if you've got a net. But if you don't have a net, you're a little bit more careful.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And so you had a winery already before you switched over to biodynamic. What kind of challenges did you face?
So again, you've got to be more careful because you can't fix the problems as easily. So you have to prevent them. It's a change in attitude because here in Ontario, particularly, but right across Canada, except for Alberta, we're dealing with liquor boards, and they're promoting cheap, 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 cheap. And one of the issues, whether it's cheap wine, cheap food, cheap cars, cheap anything, they're cheap because somebody's not getting paid properly, whether it's the earth, whether it's the workers. You know, I can buy a cheap t-shirt, but the person who made it in Bangladesh didn't get paid properly, and that's why it's so cheap. And so with wine, the great thing is it's a luxury product. And yeah, so some people are nothing but cheap, but if people are looking for a better experience, then they're looking for higher quality wines, which, whether they're organic or biodynamic, often will be made by a small, passionate vineyard as opposed to a big, non-passionate. So to me, that's, you know, it's all about supporting local, supporting small producers, supporting people that support your community.
Yeah, beautiful. I can't wait to come visit you now.
Hey, what do you think?
Well, I think the original question was about transitioning from.
What were the issues?
What were the issues?
Yes.
Yeah. And to bounce off of what Bill said with biodynamics, like I don't have a lot of tools that the same conventional winemakers might have in theirs when there's problems where you can just add something and fix it, right? And this is going back to, you know, preventing problems instead of trying to fix them. So I'm a lot more attentive in the cellar, and I'm tasting very often all the barrels and seeing what their pathway is like, and trying to imagine where they're going. And, you know, if there is problems that I think might happen, I can prevent them earlier on.
But what I find interesting about that is there was a study done a couple of years ago out of UC Davis, but it was looking at French wines and French wine magazines, that there is a significant increase in quality in marks for organics, and then another increase with biodynamic wines. And so a statistician will come back and say, yeah, but is it cause and effect, or is it a correlation? And my answer is, who cares? I mean, because you're having to spend more time paying attention because you can't fix those problems, also leads to better winemaking and more attentive winemaking, because you have to prevent the problems rather than fixing it. It just plain works.
Yeah. And so on a day-to-day basis, what kind of challenges are you facing as growers in biodynamic growing?
Well, it's interesting because last year, 2021, there were some real issues. The yields were very high, and we had a lot of rain in September and October. And so without having all the fungicides, my God, that's going to be a real issue. But what was interesting is we were doing some work for some conventional growers as well as our own work and for other organic growers. And we saw a real correlation that the grapes that have been farmed organically, if you're growing conventional grapes, you can use fungicides, you can prevent all these problems, you can fix all of these problems. So I can go for a higher yield, I can make the canopy more dense, I can do all sorts of stuff. But then mid-August, you have to stop spraying any fungicides because you can't spray within 28 or 45 days to harvest. We don't know when it's going to harvest. So all of these poor grapes that have been coddled all their lives, sprayed with all sorts of fungicides, and we don't have to pay too much attention how we grow them because we've got all these protections, all are cast out into the wilderness. And we were seeing significant differences, and we heard from other people as well, in the quality of organic grapes because they've been raised like second children to resist, you know, the skins are thicker, the canopy is less dense. When I keep talking about canopy, when the canopy is less dense, if you have a rain, it dries out much quicker.
Right.
If it's a really dense canopy, it stays wet. One of the things that we found is imperative, it's an extra step, But in summer, we have to go and pluck all of the leaves away from the fruit so that the fruit is exposed to the sun and the wind, so that after a rain, it dries out really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a conventional grower, you don't have to do all that extra labor. And now all of a sudden, when you can't spray fungicide, you're in deep doo-doo. Whereas we were finding significantly less rot in most of the organic fields that we were harvesting, as long as they were managed,
Yeah.
leaf plucking and leaf thinning, so that they weren't as dense.
Amazing. That is so fascinating. And so flavor wise, what is the result of all this in the flavor? What changes?
I'll let you go first, Casey, because I'm dominating the conversation.
Flavor, with regards to biodynamic and organic farming.
Yeah.
I find that they're just more expressive. The quality is usually really good, and flavor-wise, I couldn't necessarily pinpoint anything in specific, but usually it's just, especially from the wines on the property here, our Bordeaux Reds, they do have a little bit more texture and soul to them, I'd say.
Awesome.
To me, the easiest way to improve 99.5% of the wines, for instance, that you would see at the LCBO or the SAQ, would be to reduce the yields, because the flavor in grapes comes from the sun and the soil. And so if you're harvesting 2 ton to the acre grapes as opposed to 4 ton to the acre, there's going to be more concentration in the lower yields. One of the things that organics forces you to do is to keep that yield low, because if you let it get high, it's going to be too dense. It's not going to dry out properly. You're going to get problems with rot. So whether it's because it's biodynamic or because biodynamic makes you keep the yield low, is it a cause or is it a correlation? Who cares? The wines are much more intense, much more expressive. You know, there's much more terroir, I think, in organic and biodynamic grapes than there is in conventional. And again, you're able to pay more for the grapes, because if you can charge more, your bottling costs the same, your bottles cost the same, capsules, corks, they're all the same. So you have more money to pay the grower or yourself, if you're growing them yourselves, to reward that higher quality.
Are you noticing, are you experiencing greater awareness around what you guys are up to and what you're creating? So
what's interesting to me, yes, right? But what's interesting to me is that COVID, the standard thing in an Ontario winery is, up until 3 years ago, we wanted to get as much wine to the LCBO as possible. That was our, the old line about Ontario farmers believe if they can get their product to the end of the driveway, that God will take it away. That system has broken. And so now people, thank goodness, people are now starting to realize I can order wine online directly from a producer. I don't have to go to the LCBO. Our LCBO sales are down by 50 or 60%, but it's partly by choice. The LCBO is a great system for producing and selling cheap wine, but we don't produce cheap wine. So now we've more than replaced the sales through the LCBO through direct delivery. And
fantastic.
People order wine, they can order anything they want. They don't have to depend what happens to be in the LCBO at that particular time.
Yeah, amazing. And yeah, what would be, for people who, whether they're in the winemaking business or simply the growing business, like, do you have words of caution, caveats, like things you've learned, you're like, don't do this? Or
sure, it's experience, but in most cases, the wineries, if you're a grape grower, for instance, the wineries, especially the small ones, the big ones are good too, but the small wineries are interested in working with their growers. And so, for instance, it's been tough in Ontario. There's very little extension with government help with grape growing or with any kind of agriculture, unlike when I first started farming. And so that's been replaced either by people that work for the chemical companies, so they're not really going to promote organics. But we've found Casey and Len, our vineyard manager, they're like me. You can't shut us up. So if you're interested in going to organics and growing organic grapes, then Casey's a wonderful, Len's a wonderful resource. Casey works with a lot of other people to try and get them to convert towards organic growing, because we all feel it in the wine business, or a lot of us feel in the wine business, the better we are, then the better everybody is, and the more likely everybody's going to be successful.
Awesome. And why is that important to you?
I'm a farmer. I want Ontario agriculture to be successful. And I've done a lot of farming in my life of all sorts of different kinds. And I've realized that, to me, producing commodities, I started in the dairy business, and you're producing commodities. And then we went to cash crops, corn, soybeans, winter wheat. You're producing commodities. And I didn't start having fun. I'm not sure making money, but I didn't have to start having fun until we started working directly with the consumers. Whether it was the 20 acres of pick your own strawberries, or 12 acres of pick your own raspberries, or 75 acres of pick your own pumpkins. It's working with the consumer that to me is fun. And the wine business is an extension of that.
Yeah. And like you said, your sales are growing more direct to consumer now.
Yes.
Are you seeing more people willing to invest in what you're doing in organic and biodynamic?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, because the average consumer is more interested than the big liquor, than the LCBO is. Strangely enough, we're now selling far more wine to the SAQ, the Société d'Alcool de Québec, than we do to the LCBO.
Okay. Amazing. How is that changing your community, or what community is for you guys? Like this evolution this past couple of years?
So the question, how is...
Are you, you're seeing, you guys are growing a relationship now with consumers directly. Does it mean more people showing up at your property? Is it more dialogue with them, or are you, and it also, I hear that you guys want to support other growers and going in this direction. Like, do you find this is like, is it a movement? Is this I
do frequent tastings with winemakers in the area now that things have eased up to social gatherings. And organics is always a topic of conversation, mostly because I'm there and I have some other friends who make wine in the area who are also interested and might be doing some organic practices but aren't necessarily certified, but we talk about it. And sustainability too is a big topic of conversation with new sustainability certifications here in Ontario as well. So I think it is a big hot topic in the community at the moment. And with regards to people coming to visit the winery, we do get a lot of people from Quebec because of
absolutely
sales as well.
Absolutely.
Looking for that organic product.
I was talking to somebody last fall, and they said, "How did you get to be the #1 Google rated winery in Niagara?" And I said, "Well, I don't think we are." And she said, "Oh yeah." And she gets her phone out and starts searching in French.
Oh, wow.
So Mr. Google realized if you're searching in French and apparently Spanish, you're more likely to finish off with the word biologique.
Oh.
So in English, it's the big guys.
Yeah.
But in French, we're apparently #1 in
That's
French.
So cool.
So people are more engaged in wine in Quebec than they are in Ontario, but also the SAQ. And financially, it makes sense for them, because if they can sell a $30 bottle of Southbrook orange wine, Southbrook makes more money than a $16 bottle of what we used to call Connect White. But the people that really make the money, the extra money, is the SAQ, right? Because most of what they make is a percentage, and a hefty one, of the selling price. They get about 60%. So the SAQ is trying to push people to buy not cheap wine, but better quality, more integral, and not necessarily as worried about what our advertising budget is, as opposed to, you know, if I'm making cupcake wines, then my advertising budget in Ontario is huge. But if I'm making a, you know, a small, we're 12 to 14,000 cases a year, our advertising budget is zero-ish.
And
So,
like,
yeah.
can people get, you know, organic wine, biodynamic, can people get that confused? And do you see, like, do most organics incorporate biodynamic? Is it just a matter of time before they're one and the same?
No, it is quite different. Now, some growers are really interested and will start working towards Demeter.
Yeah.
I think the Demeter push, the biodynamic push, is more coming from the wineries than it is from because we see the difference in final quality more than the grower might. But there's now biodynamic producers in Quebec and Nova Scotia and BC, but not a huge amount in Ontario. So to me, that's slightly disconcerting.
Yeah. What do you think is in the way of that? Is it a misunderstanding over how challenging or how expensive it might be?
I would think a bit of it, and also so the average winery in Ontario has one big customer, that's the LCBO, right? So if the LCBO starts to go, we want to support organics or biodynamics or whatever, in Quebec, as an example, from what I understand, every SAQ has an organic section. In Ontario, some LCBOs have an organic section. In Quebec, some of the wineries have what's called a natural wine section. So it would be organic, biodynamic, orange, pet nat, that sort of thing. And somebody said that during the pandemic, they got big blue footsteps that lead from the entrance of the store to the natural wine section. Now, that's the kind of, that's why we sell far more wine to the SAQ than we do to the LCB. It's that kind of support. So if, you know, we try and reach the consumer to talk about sustainability, but it's really, it's up to the LCBO to go, yeah, we support it, and we will pay an extra $2 for organic or an extra $2 for biodynamic or whatever, but we've not seen that.
What are your plans? What do you guys want to create from here? What's the vision for this?
Well, from a winemaking perspective, I'm looking forward, even just in the next couple of months before this coming harvest in 2022, I'm bottling our 2020 reds. So these are wines that have been in barrel for 18 months. So all of our estate reds, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Verdot, our big Poetica blend, and even a little small batch for our wine club of Merlot. I'm excited about these 2021 wines that are still in barrel. We're still looking at those to see how they're progressing. And that's kind of what I'm excited about right now, and where I'm going in the winery, what I'm planning for. Yeah.
So in the wine business, we keep getting hammered. You got to get bigger. You got to get bigger. You got to get bigger. It's, you know, you might make a profit if you get bigger. And so there's always that pressure. And years ago, we realized that was a bad idea. And we sort of went away from that being a bad idea. Now we're going back to it. In other words, we don't want to get any bigger. Our max capacity is maybe 14,000 cases a year around in that region. So the idea is to make wines that you can sell to dedicated customers, better quality. So rather than saying, well, we can make cheaper wine and we can get it out the door, which is not a sustainable business practice. And it takes you a while to really realize that. And COVID has made us realize that, you know, if we can have at 14,000 cases, and I can never remember the math, but if we've got 500 or 600 customers that buy 5 cases a year. And if we've got a couple of thousand customers that buy between 2 and 5 cases a year, and 1,000 customers that buy between 1 and 2 cases a year, that's 100% of our direct to consumer. And don't get any bigger, make better wine, be able to charge a reasonable price for it. We cannot make wine in this country. The climate is wrong for so many.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
make better wine.
Yeah.
Better wine, that's the plan.
Well, it's a lot better plan than making more, because making more, now I've got to steal business from somebody else, right? Whereas if you're making better, you can stay at the same size, and you go, oh, don't charge me too much. I don't want to get to Napa, but most Napa wineries don't sell anything less than $100.
Yeah.
So I don't think we can do that, but we can get a reasonable price and be happy direct to consumer. And most of our promotion is on our mailing list. So we send an email out once a week and try and keep people related.
Yeah. Awesome. I love it. Don't get bigger, just make better wine. Love it.
Absolutely.
Great motto. Well, Bill and Casey, thank you so much for coming on the show today and speaking with me, myself, Passion Project in Harrowsmith. And I'm looking forward to a visit and a taste. Thank you so much.
Please do. And like I say, if you can't taste passion in the wine you're drinking the wrong wine.
Love it. Well, thanks everybody for watching, and stay tuned. I will be back soon. Bye.